24K Sports. Make sure to subscribe. Hey guys, Barry Goldstein with 24ksports.com, Golf with Goldstein. My good friend Brian Jacobs drove all the way down from Rochester to spend the day with us. Brian's going to share some tips. Brian's the lead instructor at Golf Channel Academy, very good teacher, and we're going to have some good tips for you guys about iron play here and about your low point. Where do you hit on your downswing consistently is called your low point. Very important fundamental, so tune in. Alright guys, this is Brian Jacobs, Golf Channel Academy lead instructor, who's going to share a tip about impact. I've never seen this tip, so I'm a teacher, I'm always learning. I want to see what Brian's got to teach you guys, so I'm going to let Brian take over. Brian, why don't you show us what you want to learn?
Sure, we have a real creative way to learn impact. I learned this tip a number of years ago from a guy in your area, actually, in the Ed Bow. He was out of Amelia Island, so in the West Palm area now. And basically, we have a lot of different senses. We have kinesthetic, we have auditory, there's verbal, there's all different ways to learn. So this is kinesthetic and auditory, where we actually pull out a lie board, and when we try to learn about managing low point and impact for an iron, most people have either, there's two different models. Some people swing up, and some people will try to pinch and swing down hard, get their chest way forward. So what we try to do is to use an impact board, and we teach by sound. So we might have a student come in and say, okay, all we want you to do is just touch the board lightly, and they might miss the board completely. And we might say, okay, here's the sound we want you to make on the board. A simple brushing. And they'll say, well, what does that mean? Well, that means that the club is actually moving down, and I'm making an arc in my golf swing, and the low point is here. So Barry, I know, talks a lot about ball position, which is super important. If the ball is way up here and our low point's back here, we're in trouble. So we want to have good ball position. So I might say to them, okay, you don't hit the board at all, make a louder sound on it. So they'll start to say, well, that sounds too heavy, that sounds too deep in the ground. What we'll do when they become proficient on the board and make the proper sound is we'll actually add a ball to it. And we'll say, okay, we want you to contact the board first, and then the ball. And they don't have to hit it far, just 100 yards. So let's hit the board first, then the ball. And it doesn't matter where the ball goes. We just want to hear that sound. That sound, when they're touching the board first, is actually the shaft of the club leaning a little bit forward and hitting on the ground, or hitting, mimicking the ground into the board at proper impact. So it's really a simple way to do that. And then what we'll do is we'll actually take the board away eventually and just have them hit balls, and it'll be amazing. They'll start to take a divot in front of the golf ball. And they may not be a divot taker, they may be super shallow with the face wide open, or cupping their hand at impact. And it teaches them that the club actually, when it swings down, it's actually moving and leaning forward and then releasing.
I've got a question for Brian. That's a great tip. See, that's something I've never seen. I've never seen what Brian just did. And we've both been on the Golf Channel. We're both pretty well-known teachers. I've never seen anybody do that. So I've got a question.
Sure. You
get a guy out that's a lifter, he's topping every ball. How quickly can that help him learn how to strike a divot?
2 swings.
There you go, guys.
But it's auditory, and sometimes we never teach to that. Like I learned from Hank Haney. And he's very kinesthetic. He moved the players around. To me, I relate to that really, really well. Grew up in baseball like you did, hockey.
Right.
I was very kinesthetic. I wanted people to move me. You might be more visual. The kids today, too, are very, very visual now. And they're somewhat auditory, so I try to appeal to all the senses. We might move the club down for them into the board, have them do it, and then when they start to see success touching the board and then hitting a ball, we may actually move the ball forward on a tee as well.
These are great tips. I've got a question for Brian so this is not a tip you would use for your driver. This is not a great right. Why, Brian?
Because we're moving the club upward with the driver. So
say that again?
Our angle of attack is upward, not this way. And irons are moving down and woods are moving up.
Let me just reiterate that. Irons are moving down, woods are moving up. That's a great tip. In essence, what he just said, 9 out of 10 golfers do not realize that.
Right.
They think they got to lift the ball up when it's on the ground, and that's why they top their irons, and when the ball's on the tee, they'll chop down.
Right. Well,
do we want that, or we want the opposite?
No, and they've read somewhere, or they've had, and you've experienced this before too. We do big formats, golf schools, and we'll say, how many of you had lessons? Raise your hand. One person. Okay, how many of you play with your friends? Raise your hand. Okay, you've had lessons, and none of them are good. They're, well, for you to get it up in the air, you got to hit down. Well, if you hit up, it goes up, and if you hit down, it goes down. And the clubs are built a certain way with certain lofts and angles.
Very true.
To make the ball go a certain way, a certain distance. So we want to utilize that by proper ball position and proper turf contact.
I've got one more question for Brian. This is a great tip. With all the lessons I give, and you do the same thing for a living I do, I get a lot of really good players, but we also get beginners. We get intermediate players. In your opinion, if you got 100 golfers, how many of them struggle with taking a good divot and having a proper low point?
Out of 100, 98.
I was going to say 90 to 100.
Right.
It's a very challenging thing, especially for a guy that's not breaking 80, a guy that's not breaking 90. It's a challenging thing.
Right. Well, they don't want to have collisions with the ground.
Yet we need a collision with the ground.
Right. They've had bad experience because it happens early, or they don't understand how the golf club works. So we need to explain to them how the face works, why the shaft leans the way that it does, where the handle goes, and we can do that in conjunction with doing something audible or something that's...
This was great. Thank you for demonstrating.
Thank you.
Ed Bow. I like Ed.
Yeah, Ed's a great guy.
Hey, Ed.
Hi, Ed.
But guys, these are things... I'm a teacher, and I like watching other teachers teach because you pick up little tidbits. You agree?
Absolutely, I agree.
And I only listen. I'm very selective with what I listen to. Very selective. I had a daughter, a great player. I used to tell her, Carly only listens to her dad. She'd have guys because she's a pretty girl. People would want to give her tips on the driving range. Well, my dad's a golf pro. That would chase him away.
Right.
Be careful what you listen to.
Absolutely.
Be very careful. Well, Brian, this was a great tip.
Thanks, Barry.
Great tip. And remember, guys, 24ksports.com. Find us on social media. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We'll catch you next time.